Joining me today is Chief Justice Broderick, and we're talking about changedirection.org. We heard some of your story, the sort of the goals of the organization, and one of the things I want to talk about is sort of what are the 5 signs. If we're going to have honest conversations about mental health, we can't shy away from it. I think that's a core message of what you're trying to say. And if we're not going to shy away from it, we ought to know what it looks like. I know you all have a really quick little guide for that, but I'd love you to take a second through what are the 5 signs that people ought to be aware of?
And I say this to you, I don't have any medical degree or psychiatric degree or psychology degree, but this campaign was organized by those who do. And it's received very high marks. It's not diagnostic. It doesn't identify a specific mental health problem, but it's hard to have a mental health problem and not have one or more of these problems.
And basically it's saying, go talk to someone.
Yes. What I want people to do is to take these little rack cards, I call them. They have the 5 emoticon faces and a little text next to them, which I can review. I want everyone to take these and put them on the refrigerator. We've given out 400,000 of these. I don't mean drop them from an airplane, I mean handed them out. And I want people to learn the signs. I want pediatricians to talk to parents about the signs. I want people to just exhale on mental health and learn about it. We say to our kids, don't talk to strangers. Don't get into a car with a stranger. If you catch on fire, roll on the ground. I never caught on fire, but I knew to do that if I did. This affects millions of kids and adults, by the way. 1 in 5 adults will have a mental health issue during their lifetime. So, what are the signs? My son, by the way, who I talked about, said, Dad, if I had known those signs, if I had seen this card when I was 15, I would have found myself in that card. He said, don't overlook the fact and help people find their own problem. He said, I didn't know I had a mental health problem. It's very common. So what are the signs? The first one is you're not feeling like yourself. You feel different. Not just a bad day. Everyone has those, but you just feel off. And it lingers. It lingers. You are unreasonably agitated. Things really upset you. You're otherwise pretty even keel, but suddenly you're irritated and upset about a lot of stuff over a long period of time.
And there's no triggering event.
No triggering event. You're just irritated suddenly. Everything seems to be bothering you. Sometimes, what's true with my son, the third sign is people tend to withdraw often. And so my son didn't say, I'm going to my room and don't bother me. He just spent more time in his room. And he was an artist, so people say, well, he's an artist. They tend to withdraw. If it was in a school environment, suddenly a child who would go to lunch with his or her friends in the lunchroom, kind of sitting over on the side. Your physical appearance changes. You used to be reasonably neat and organized, but now you look like you don't own a mirror anymore. Or you don't look in the mirror but once a year. So people notice that. You might notice it in your own demeanor. And lastly, a feeling of hopelessness. I don't mean, hey, I didn't do well on the test, so I feel kind of down. I mean hopelessness, kind of across the board, like nothing matters, you can't move forward in your life. It's just really like a 10-pound weight on each ankle. And so if you find those signs, what we're asking people to do is to connect. If somebody walked into the studio right now with a limp, you and I would say, my gosh, you're okay, let me get your chair. We wouldn't ignore the limp. But if somebody seemed to exhibit those signs, we'd say, not my job, what would I say, how do I connect? What we want people to do is to say, you okay? You don't seem like yourself. You used to come out with us, but you don't anymore. You all right? What's going on? Be honest. And people will open up with you. Just like I was telling your viewers, these kids who come up to me in auditoriums, they will share their stories with me. You know why? Because I won't judge them. Because I was pretty ignorant myself. My son, who I love dearly, says to me all the time, Dad, people with mental health problems have 2 things in common. Number 1, they didn't ask for it. It's true. Number 2, they don't deserve it. That's true too. In his case, he told me in high school, Dad, my palms were sweaty every day in school. I said, why didn't you say something? He said, what would I have told you? That I was shy? I wasn't as strong as you? I didn't know it was a health problem. And there's no difference, by the way, between diabetes and mental health, other than they're both health issues. That's the commonality. We have to start treating mental health like we treat every other illness. And I guarantee you, based on my anecdotal on-the-ground experience now, people want to talk about it.
And you're doing a great job getting the message out that we ought to talk about it.
We need to. There are kids.
So,
there are kids or our relatives or our family members.
Chief Justice, thanks so much for being here talking about it and sharing those stories.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And thank you for joining us for this edition of Capital Connections, your weekly access to politics and policy along the I-89 and 981 corridors and how it impacts your life in our region. If you've got an idea for a future show or a comment, why don't you send me an email? But whatever you do, join us at this same time next week for another edition of Capital Connections.